What a big week coming up. It is Pegasus World Cup Day on Saturday at Gulfstream Park, a 13 race card where every one of the 13 races has at least 9 horses entered so far. And oh, yeah, it's Tuesday when we're recording this, and these entries are already out. Morning lines aren't quite out for the full card yet, but don't worry about it. For the big Pegasus races, they are. And myself, Gino Bacola, and Barry Spears, the sniper, we're going to help get you all set early on the week and get you ready for Gulfstream Park Saturday, Pegasus Day, 7 graded stakes races, 3 Pegasus races. You can get all the help you need at drf.com. They have everything, those past performances. They've got the clocker reports for Gulfstream Park every day. They've got the DRF picks. And keep in mind that you can always get help with just articles and news and everything else happening. Those clocker reports for every racing day. Barry, buddy, I'm pumped, man. This is a really good card. You and I are going to talk about races 6 through 13. Every race that we're talking about has a field of 10 entered. So it's
Man,
some
it's
really good
it's
stuff.
it's unbelievable. This is, the card that kind of kicks off the season, if you will. Um, I mean, it's very competitive. The back half of the card is very competitive. There's a few races I'm looking forward to. I know the Pegasus isn't high on star quality, but as a betting race, it's very, very, very good.
And
So
that's fantastic to me, right? If we're not going to be able to have a bunch of the best grade 1 type horses, then at least give me a big field that we can
exactly.
bet on. And that's what we're going to get in all of these races, because the time of the year right now, it can be a little tricky for the top tier horses that might have pointed to Breeders' Cup races, and maybe they either recently retired or they may not even quite be starting their year up yet. They might be ramping up and pointing back for the Breeders' Cup. They may be getting started just right now back on the track and maybe starting working out now and pointing for races in March and April. That's how a lot of the racing schedule sort of goes now, Barry, right? We have these horses that point for the end, and they're not necessarily racing throughout the year.
Yeah, and this is a chance for some of these kind of horses that were flying under the radar or maybe even competing at a lower level to step up and kind of come into their own for this year. And this is a good jumping off point for a lot of these horses.
And we have had plenty of Southern California days, New York days, even Gulfstream days in the past where you've got big races, but some races are 5 or 6, and you can kind of quickly pass through. That just is not what this card is at all on Saturday. You will be able to find some really big opportunities. And what's cool about that, it's also the Pegasus World Cup Betting Championship on Saturday. So this is one of the biggest betting contests of the year. It's a tournament with about $250,000 in prizes. I think they gave out 280,000 total last year. The top prize was 125 grand. You can play this thing at Gulfstream, at Santa Anita, or Express Bet, and it's 6,000 to enter. So that's a lot, Barry, right? For a lot of folks, being able to put up 6,000 just to enter a tournament. But you can actually qualify, which is the way that I try to get into these big tournaments, is by qualifying in the feeders. There are a couple feeders this week, Wednesday and Thursday at Gulfstream, $80. In those feeders, you win into the Friday tournament, which is the last chance. That's a big $1,000 win your way in. So for $80, if you qualify out of that, you qualify to Friday, and then boom, you can actually win your way in to this tournament for $80, have a chance to play for huge money. And yeah, for me, it's always, I try with the feeders because I can't necessarily fork up putting 6,000 in. I know a lot of people do, or they have sponsors, or maybe these are a few of the big tournaments a year that they'll aim for. I'd personally try qualifying, play Wednesday or Thursday at Gulfstream Park. They're super simple format tournaments too. I think they're just win place. And you pick some of your favorite races on the Gulfstream card. And then Friday's a bigger one. So it's sort of like gets you ready moving forward to the big tournament. You really feel like you're tournament ready once you've qualified through a few others.
Yeah, I mean, when I was playing tournaments, all the time, those feeders were so important to my play because it just cut your entry fees in, down to almost nothing. Like
Yep.
in this sense, $80 is nothing compared to a $6,000 entry fee. And when you can win these lower level tournaments and get in, it kind of boosts your ROI. I mean, you got to look at it like you're betting through the windows as well, because you don't want to overextend yourself and not get a return on your investment. And getting in these lower level feeders helps you do that, especially when you win. That way you're not overextending yourself. You get a nice entry into, and you could parlay that into multiple different tournaments. So it's always a good thing.
So many opportunities for big winnings this week. They're going to have that coast to coast pick 5 back. They'll have the races out a little later in the week. I'm sure there'll probably be probably 3 at Gulfstream and maybe 2 at Santa Anita or whatever I'm sure it'll be a little more of a focus for Pegasus Day and at Gulfstream Park. We are going to take a look at these DRF past performances, everything you need at drf.com. And they have the all access past performances now, which means you can look at the classic style. If you're someone who grew up looking at the racing form, you like that format, you like that style. If you're someone who's going to be looking online, like how Barry and I are doing right now, and you want to jump into the charts, you want to jump into the replays, you want to jump into the stats, the database, you want the formulator PPs. And you can also click the Timeform US PPs, and you can get all the tools that they have there. Really love the crew at Timeform US, David Aragona, Craig Milkowski. Trust them. They do a fantastic job making their figures, the pace projectors, everything. So great tools for a big day, for a big week. Let's see if Barry and I can help lead you in the right direction a few times throughout the card on Saturday. So now as we talk about races 6 through 10 or 6 through 9, they don't have morning lines out quite yet, but we'll talk about these horses, give you an idea of who's probably going to be taking money, some of the horses that we'll like. And the Pegasus races do have the morning lines out for those 3 races. So we'll be able to get a little more idea on what the prices of those horses are and who we're trying to beat in those ones. Barry, the first couple races we're going to be talking about, we've got some distance races to discuss, a couple of long races on the grass. The first one is the La Previante, which is a mile and a half on the turf. So we're going to be going long here for fillies and mares, some olders. Always intriguing in these distance races. I mean, in every race, but I think more so in these long distance races, I have to start with, okay, who's going to be pushing the pace? What does the pace look like? Because some of these, in these distance races, you can get groups sometimes that are a bunch of deep closers or maybe slower horses early. That's why they're in these long distance races. Maybe sometimes you can catch the horses that either get out front and steal them or sit a nice trip. What are you looking at this race from either a pace or horses to play against?
Um, this race was kind of straightforward to me, at least on paper. Romana Mia, I guess that's how you say it. Looks like a standout here.
She's the horse to beat for sure.
Yeah, I don't
Hands
think
down.
any of these horses can touch that one. If she could come with her B game and probably still win this race. But there's a few others that I thought were interesting.
And just a point with Romana Mia too, because we're always trying to play against some of these short prices throughout a big card like this. There are going to be a few races that you either maybe don't play or you find a different way to play or you single this horse in exotics. I think this does start a middle pick 4 also. So there's a bunch of different wagers throughout the day. She was probably just prepping in that last race too, right? I think we sort
Yeah.
of were trying to beat her because we weren't sure with her on the synthetic. Okay, they're just taking a swing here. It looks like maybe they're getting a race under her for her start of the year. And if that was not quite cranked and ready, she might be able to move forward off of that race, save ground, and she could be really tough in here.
Yeah, I think I know there's no morning line out, but I would gather she's probably going to be about 3 to 5 in this spot, especially with the 2 horses that she thumped the last time pretty good coming back, being, slight contenders here. I thought Taz was interesting just because of the trip that one will probably get. I would hope and think that, the connections would want this one on the lead, because there's not too much speed, but
No,
I don't think it's going to affect too much of the race per se, because Alpha Bella is another horse
that's
that
the
has
one
some
that I
speed.
think's interesting. I just don't know how good she is or how far she wants to go, but she could fall into a really nice trip in here, right? Making her second start back off a short little break. She and you know what, that race last time out, it's not bad. She's just a little below on figures and numbers. She's going to have to improve definitely to compete with the horse like Romagna Mia.
Yeah, and blinkers off doesn't really get me excited either. I think she's just a little bit short. Not getting Lasix, I don't think she's won in a while without Lasix. Back in December 2022 was the last win without Lasix. And I'm with you too. I think she's a cut below these. Taz fits, but you know, Romana Mia just handled her easily last
The
time, and it was just so ridiculous that how easily that Romana Mia won, that you can't really think that Taz could turn the tables. But if the scenario works out where Taz is just lone speed and slows it way down, there's a possibility that Taz could win this race. But the problem is the price probably won't be that attractive.
Two other horses I wanted to mention in here. I kind of like them overall as horses. I'm not sure if they'll get the type of trips they need, or again, I don't know if they're good enough. But if you are in this race trying to beat Romagna Mia, or if Romagna Mia gets beat, I wouldn't be shocked if one of these horses were to end up running well. Our Callie Kim is such a cool horse. Man, she is so cool. If you just look through her past performances, she's a 7-year-old mare and she's only run 13 times. So she's obviously had some physical issues along the way because we see a lot of gaps in her past performances. But she's been in the money in 11 of her 13 starts, and the other two she ran fourth. And she was beaten 2 and 3 lengths in those races. She always shows up. She's so honest, and you can see she was breaking her maiden for maiden 16 a couple years ago. And even when she comes back off the bench, she's winning for 32 and just goes right up the ladder. Like 32, non 2, another tougher non 2, and then she goes into a graded stakes and wins all of them pretty easily.
Yeah.
She's just a cool horse to root for. I love seeing horses like this that she's got ability. She just has a tough time, or she's been a little unlucky physically along the way.
Yeah, when she's healthy and she runs, and
Yep.
she shows up. And I don't expect anything different on Saturday. It's just, any other time,
Oh yeah.
with Romana Mia not in this race, that one would be probably the
The,
favorite.
the horse to be, absolutely. And a horse I've mentioned once or twice in past weeks with you where we've talked about races. Sister O'Toole is a distance horse. She just is a deep closer in a race where you look at a horse like Romagna Mia who's going to be closing. Is she a horse who you want to have to be 3 or 4 lengths behind her? But I wouldn't be shocked to see her run well in this spot. I just don't think she's quite as good as the other one there. She chased a horse named Linda's Gift, who was a wire-to-wire winner in the red carpet, and then Linda's Gift has gotten pretty good out here. She's sort of one of the better older now, and she's fast. So if you catch her in a small field, you're probably not going to win that race because there's not a whole lot of other speed pushing her. Just to mention a couple other alternatives for anyone looking at this race as a little different than Barry and I, but we both did feel like that Romagna Mia is going to be pretty tough in here to get things started. So that's the grade 3. Race number 6, kick off the 50-cent pick 4. Let's move to a synthetic handicap. Barry, some of these synthetic races now, I know people will sometimes poo-poo the synthetic surface if they're not used to it or they don't like handicapping it as much. I love it. I've always loved it. I actually had really good success when there was Southern California synthetic racing, when there was Keeneland. I did really well at a lot of those synthetic tracks. I don't mind them. I don't mind playing the races at any level. If there's a competitive race, I'm fine with it on any
Yeah.
surface, really, at any level. I don't need to be playing just graded stakes races. I can play the lowest level of races if they're competitive. And man, this one is not low at all. This is a nice $100,000 handicap race with legitimate stakes and graded stakes caliber horses in it. And I'm going to start, Barry, with a horse who I played when we talked about a similar race just a few weeks ago, Dreams of Tomorrow, who comes out of that race with Fly the W, who is just that win machine. Fly the W is another one of those really cool horses who we just have to pull up. This horse loves Gulfstream synthetic and just wins in all different ways, and somehow finds a way again to get up by a neck last time out against a tough group. You can see Fly the W had never faced a group quite like that. And just based on the odds, he was 14-1 that day, but he is good. He's a 16-time winner. And Dreams of Tomorrow finished fourth in that race, but Dreams of Tomorrow drew wide and was parked out early, was 4 wide going into the turn, was about 6 or 7 lengths off, was always out wide, had to angle out to about the 6-7 path, and was still coming late. And I'm looking at the way this big field could shape up, and I'm thinking, towards the outside especially. I mean, right next door, you've got Ocean Atlantique, you've got County Final. They want to be forwardly placed. And then you start looking at Skyro wants to sit close. Border Town is coming out of sprint races where they've been right on the lead. Bluebirds Over will be forwardly placed from the outside. Saratoga Flash will be forwardly placed from the outside. So I saw this race as being one with a very contentious pace. I was looking for someone off the pace. I definitely wanted to use Dreams of Tomorrow back because I remember, when we play horses, we remember their trips, and he was fourth that day, but I thought he ran really well despite that trip and should be in a better spot here, not having to be as far back either. If you look at his running lines, he doesn't need to be 6 or 7 lengths out of it early. He can sit much closer, and I think he should be able to here from a more inside trip. So
Yeah, definitely a formidable contender here. I kind of went with other horses coming out of that race.
it's
That
a strong race.
Yeah,
That was
it
a
definitely
strong
is.
race.
There's a few horses out of that race that'll probably show up and run well in this spot. One of them was Skyro, who was actually favored in that Fly the W race back on
Brutal
December
trip.
30. Had a terrible trip, came running and just kind of fizzled out. And
It just caught
you
up
know,
with him. The
yep,
wide trip.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that one merits a really good shot in this
Totally
race.
agree. He's a
Uh,
playback for sure.
yeah, and Portfolio Company right next door. Um, Kind of seems like this horse fits here.
At the
I
level.
know, yeah, and that's one of the toughest things to do as a horse player nowadays is when you see horses going back and forth from the synthetic to the turf. It's hard to gauge how they're going to be, and this one has never run on the synthetic before. It's totally a crapshoot, and I wouldn't. With Portfolio Company, I wouldn't take too short of a price on a horse like this in a race like that. It has never run on the synthetic. So you got to tread lightly. County Final ran well in that same race, was beaten by Skyro 2 back on December 2nd. But again, Fly to W is sort of like the standard of
The
synthetic
synthetic.
racing
Yep.
in Florida or at Gulfstream. And, kind of measuring that horse and how they ran against that horse could give you an idea of what's going to happen. So I'm going to go with that angle for this race. Even a horse like Ocean Atlantique, um, who does have 2 wins on the synthetic,
Yep.
uh, could be formidable in this spot, despite the last race where he kind of got beat badly by Wolfie's Dynagos, who's also kind of a synthetic dynamo.
And but he's one of those horses too where he gets out front and cruises, and sometimes if you're in chase mode, like where Ocean Atlantique was in like chasing the lone speed,
Hmm.
that's the toughest spot to be sometimes, right? When you're the one trying to do the dirty work. I wouldn't completely talk you off Ocean Atlantique either. It's a really challenging, fun, contentious betting race. I'm glad this one's in the mix and I'm glad we got to talk about this one too, because now I looked at even a horse like the one is kind of like Portfolio Company for Chad Brown. He's trying to figure out where these horses fit. Exact estimate coming out of these grass races. Okay, this horse has some solid races against upper level allowance company. He's not quite a graded stakes type horse, but maybe he can stack up really well in the synthetic here. He's a horse who has some tactical speed. He doesn't exactly need the lead, but he can sit pretty close, so he can give you some options here. He'll probably just be a little bit. The problem with just these connections is alone, they always get a little bit over bet. But man, how about the start to the meet for Chad Brown?
Oh
Where do you
man,
see that?
he's not having a good time right now down in
No,
Miami.
no,
Um, he's gonna he's gonna break out of it. It's just a matter
soon.
of
Oh
when
yeah.
and how many wins he gets because he's gonna put together a string of them, and it looks like he's gonna try and get some on Saturday for sure. Another horse that kind of caught my eye was Ocean Vision. Has 2 wins on the synthetic overseas.
Yep.
One going short, one going longer. Why not? I mean,
And
again, it's you got a price shop here because I think Ocean Atlantique, given his running style in the last few races, if he keeps that running style, he's going to be really tough in here and probably at a price because you see that last race, people see it and they're like, oh man, he didn't do anything and
just
he's going the
eliminate it.
wrong
Put a line
direction.
right through it.
Right. And he's actually better than that. He did it before in the Manhattan where he was clearly overmatched. And probably distance limited in that race, going a mile and a quarter on the turf at Belmont. But I think that this horse, morning line wise, probably won't be the longest shot on the board, but won't be the shortest price either. So that one, you kind of have to feel it out, especially once the morning lines come out to see who might be where, and then you can make your decisions from there.
Yeah, the intriguing horse that you were just talking about before, Ocean Vision, is also one who has raced only twice here. Both of them came on the grass, and we'll go back to the synthetic where they've had previous success. And they come out of a couple strong races. Carl Spackler, really nice 3-year-old last year, multiple graded stakes winner. Also, More Than Looks was a horse who he lost to twice. More Than Looks went on and was in the Breeders' Cup, was only beaten a couple lengths there. That's a very nice horse, too. So, if you look at those 2 races last year, you can be very forgiving about those for a horse who's now going to come back to a surface where they've had success in France. Yeah, I'm France and in Ireland. And what's nice too is that on different synthetic surfaces, right? One in Ireland, one in France, and as you mentioned, going short and going long. So there's some ability here. Just got to find the right sort of spot, the right level, all of that for Ocean Vision for a capable barn. Fun synthetic race there in race number 7. Let's dive into race number 8. We're going to go long on the grass again here, Barry. This one is for the boys going longer, the older horses. This one actually will kick off your pick 6. So we'll have the final 6 races here to discuss on the card, all graded stakes races. Barry, this one, you start us off. How do you see the William L. McKnight playing out?
This is another one. Like I know this is going to be the theme, but this is another one that's can go way different directions. I mean, I kind of think that this one might be more of a rider's race than anything else, because all the horses seem very evenly matched, and it's going to come down to trip. Like for example, the horse that I'm going to talk about, Stone Age,
Yep.
who I'm not really enthused about in general. But
He
I
could
can
get a
see
great trip.
yes, I can see a situation with Ryan Moore in the saddle that he puts this horse in the race earlier than he has been lately and could get a really good trip here.
Yep. He's hard to
Um,
completely leave out because of that, because he
right,
could just fall into a nice spot, second start off the bench with the blinkers coming off. He chased main event last time, who's going to be in the bigger race this week, the Pegasus, who in main event was a lone speed winner that day. It was his first start in a few months, and he kind of loomed up, and then he just flattened. And you can probably eliminate those 2 races on the yielding turf,
right.
and so you start building a case for him. But you were kind of hitting on my same thought. There's nobody in here that you say for sure, okay, that is the horse going to the lead. There's a couple that wouldn't surprise me. Cellist, maybe, could. He's
Yeah.
got a little tactical speed. I could see that. He's done it before. We mentioned Stone Age here. He could end up in a really nice spot. He's another one of them. by default, a horse like Verstappen is probably just like a little more tactical than most of the horses in this race. He could be just in a decent spot because a lot of these others are just not that fast early.
No, and that's the thing. It's like, well, who wants to take the lead? You know, when you're looking at the form, that's where you kind of want to go first and kind of work your way. You know, you want to see who the favorite is and who the speed is,
Yep,
and then you kind
exactly.
of work your way from there. You know, but even a horse like Grand Sonata has
Absolutely.
shown that kind of speed in the past, and if nobody wants to go, I can see Tyler or you know, Tyler just kind of saying, "Hey, well, if nobody wants it, I'll take it."
And the key is
Um,
he's a must use for me in any sort of multi exotics because he's just coming out of a lot of shorter races recently where they've just had faster races to the half mile than they'll probably be in here. By
yeah,
default, he should be within a couple lengths, no doubt about it.
yeah, and then you got the older contingent like Rock Emperor is 8-year-old, but still in pretty good form
He's the
and
class of the
being
field.
competitive. Yeah, so this could go a lot of different directions. I wouldn't you know, settle on a short price here by any means. I think this is actually what I would deem a spread race because everybody kind of looks the same. Um, Francisco Clemente is probably going to take a lot of action because of the rider and the trainer and the connections and the owner. They
But
win a lot of races, but being stuck down on the rail
and that lack of speed,
and
that could
lack of
hurt.
speed, and you know, coming from a race that wasn't that highly rated.
No,
That Hollywood Turf Cup was a decent race, but this is definitely a better race than that. So, you know, this could go a lot of different ways. I'm sure Francisco Clemente will probably be the favorite, but doesn't look like a cinch by any means.
the horses that are for sure in the mix for me in this race, I'm glad we mentioned them all. Stone Age, I'm going to use. I'm using Grant Sonata, who Barry mentioned. I'm using Verstappen, and I'm going to use Shellis too. I think this is probably the horse for me, probably the one to beat, just with the versatility that he's shown. His effort on the synthetic last time out was really good. He was chasing Wolfie's Dynaghost, who we were talking about, who's a really nice synthetic horse. And that was not even his preferred surface for Shellis, to where he's done a lot of his best work on the grass. Few starts back in the Sycamore at Keeneland. He's on the lead, and he's a good second that day. It's 17-1, and he's more often than not forwardly placed. But if somebody's looking at this race like we are, and one of these horses says, "Oh, hey, let's go try to get aggressive here," he's totally fine sitting off the pace, and it won't bother him at all if he's got to sit or have to close and pass horses. So he's, to me, I think a major player in here. And yeah, we went through Grand Sonata. Those will be a lot of the ones in the mix. But
Yeah,
dang, like,
I kind of like value engineering in this spot. You could kind of toss that last race going 2 miles where F5 was really dominant on the front end the whole race. Um, and I think that was totally a
yep,
prep for this one. This horse just missed last year in this race. Why not? And probably will get a better price or same price as you did last year. You got 10-1 last year. Probably be around that this year too.
you're right. Yeah, this horse got really good at this time of the year last year, and then threw in a couple clunkers towards the end of the year.
Yeah, it
Then to
needed some
start,
time. He needed
yeah,
time. It was
like
clear he was
a
off
couple big
form.
races in a row, right? Big
Mhm.
races in a row, and then needed some time, took some time. And this year, if you're looking at those two races this year and you're really discouraged, the price on this horse will be good enough to use because you can excuse November 30th synthetic. Okay, not the surface that this horse likes as much, and then comes back like you said and was chasing lone speed going 2 miles. He'll be ready for a good effort again. Is he still got as good of an effort in him as he did last year? Maybe, but you should be rewarded with the price on him. So
Yeah, not to mention my guy Michael Hui, the owner, um, did this with Echo Zulu. So, you know, it's a pattern. You know what I mean? Like you can see that value engineering. Look at last year at this time was probably his sharpest, and I think they're trying to peak again this year. And I would give him a good shot in this race for sure.
really challenging, fantastic betting race again. The eighth race at Gulfstream Park. on Saturday. Let's move to race number 9. It is the grade 2 inside information. We're going to go 7 furlongs on the dirt here. And these are fillies and mares, 4-year-olds and up. In this race, we have a really cool 5-year-old mare that'll always take some beating when she shows up in these types of races. She's not quite a grade 1 caliber. Like, she's not really a Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint type of horse, but wow, she's really sharp. She never really runs a bad race. Mary Quite Contrary won going a mile in the Rampart last time out. 2 starts back, she was second in the Princess Rooney. You can see she has a couple defeats to Echo Zulu and Goodnight Olive. And other than that, I mean, she's just right there. She won this race last year, coming from pretty far out of it after some trouble at the start. That's the way you can beat her, Barry, because she's not that fast early, but she always does come running, and she's a cool horse here. That's Mary Quite Contrary.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious as to how they're going to bet that horse, um, because at least on paper, there's enough speed for her to run down. Gerrymander has a lot. Sassy Nature is probably going to go. Um, you got Music City Star.
Yep.
Uh, Intrepid Daydream also is quick. So, it's I think there's going to be enough pace, but um, it's tough from the outside there. I mean, I don't foresee her getting any kind of breaks, saving ground or anything
No.
like that. So that might be a tough one, especially if they bet that horse down. But the horse that really interests me here is Bluefield.
Yeah, I'm glad you
Um,
mentioned her.
that horse was kind of stuck on the rail last time and didn't get an ideal trip. Back again on the rail, which I think will help her price, basically, um, because it was the second off a decent layoff. She clearly improved, ran better against these type of horses,
So not
and
not to just pause your thought for one
yeah,
second. I'm going to pull the race up because there are a few of the horses in this race, so it's
oh
kind of
yeah,
interesting to watch. We've got Intrepid Daydream, who's the 4. The 5 is Olivia Darling, and the 1 is Bluefield. They all come out of that same race where they lost to a lone speed winner, and it was going 6 furlongs. This is 7. But watch Bluefield from the rail and go ahead now. Keep talking.
yeah. She kind of gets out well and gets shuffled back pretty quickly. I don't know if that was by design or they were just kind of letting her get out of the gate, not really trying to win this race, meaning to win the race on Saturday. um but intrepid Daydream gets a pretty decent trip here. Olivia Darling kind of is in the race early, and I think this is going to play out a little bit the same way. um so Bluefield actually kind of gets up in between horses here
Nowhere to go.
and nowhere to go, and she kind of has to pause and then makes
Angle
a nice
around.
little run, gets out and kind of finishes strong. And I think that's what they wanted to see here, because this is the goal on Saturday. I'm not really sure what kind of price you're going to get on her, especially with Pratt aboard, for Safi, but man, between that one and the 2-horse 2-item saver, I'm very interested in both of those horses.
Yeah, I think she's probably my horse to bet if we can get a some nice value on her. Just compare the trip that she had to the horses like that she finishes right next to, and she was the second best horse in this race.
Probably, yeah.
She was shuffled down inside, got shuffled back, and then had to angle all the way around them, and she finishes 5th, barely behind these horses, while she had a lot more trouble and a lot more work to do in a race that was going 6 furlongs. And I just
Right.
think this is going to be a better setup for her.
Absolutely, and in a 6 furlong race, she really ran 7, if you really wanna think about it.
Absolutely.
She
And
what she did in the race, it kinda, she lost ground, came back, came around, and finished strong, and probably not at her peak in this race either. So, It's something to think about.
And she doesn't have to be that far back either. If you look at her prior races, she
No,
can
she's
sit
quick enough.
a lot
Yeah.
closer. She can be more tactical. And that's probably what you'll get with Pratt coming aboard. Zayas has done that with her before. Like you said, we don't exactly know if it was the plan to try to do that, make one late run, set it up, or if she did get shuffled a little bit more. Whatever it was, we know that they have other options with her. They can try to get her in the race a little more early on. She's been competitive with Mary, quite contrary. She wasn't too far behind her when they were up against Graded Stakes Company a few starts back. So, yeah, I think she's a player in here. The other one I will throw on to a pick 4 or 5 just in case. If that race plays out like it did on paper, the horse that might be the one to sneak away would be Sassy Nature, who
Mm.
might just be faster than everyone. I don't know if this horse can go 7 furlongs. I have no idea really how good she is, but if all those horses, the 3 that come out of that last race we watched, are all going to try to do the same thing here, where they sit a little bit, especially because it's going 7 furlongs and they're trying to save a little something. If a horse can get out front again, I'm going to throw this one into a pick 4 or 5, Barry, just in case, because I think she might offer us some nice value, and she could get brave and give a good run for our money. Their Sassy Nature, but
Well,
they'll have to hold off Mary and the 1, I think.
yeah, I mean, I don't know how good O'Sheen Murphy is, with a speed horse
It's a
on the dirt.
very good point.
And I would tend to think that the way this horse is running style is they're going to be all out from the jump. I
Yep.
mean, what else could they actually do?
No, and that's what I
Um,
want to see. If you bet this horse, you want this
yes,
horse to be a length
absolutely.
clear, and you hope the others are all content with what we saw in the sugar swirl. Hey, let's sit second, third, or fourth. Let's see if the horse comes back to us, and maybe she doesn't. But you'll probably get Jerry Mander right next door trying their hardest to push her, because I don't think Jerry Mander really wants to sit off horses. It's funny looking in the past performances. There were a couple different horses that you saw that had match races in New York over the last few months. It's like,
Yeah, at
oh,
Saratoga, I saw
yep,
one
there
of
was one
two.
and then another one here too. So, um, again, a fun race in different. What's so cool about this card too, just different dynamics for all of these races too. We saw a couple long on the turf. Here's dirt, an elongated dirt sprint, and it just shows you in the one race in the sugar swirl the difference between 6 and 7 could be a lot for a horse like Bluefield.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that's why you should demand your price in this race. I mean,
Yep.
this is another one where there's a lot of contenders. We didn't even talk about Olivia Darling,
No,
who was kind of coming into her own, came off the bench on December 23rd and ran a nice race in that in
there's
in
nothing
that
wrong
one
with
we
that
just
race.
watched.
Yeah,
Right. Why
only
can't she,
beaten.
step up? I mean, the only downside is she's stuck on the outside, but you get your top rider here. So she's gonna take money regardless.
You even
Um,
started to point out the real wild card horse,
yeah,
the
the two
yeah,
or
two item
two-item
saver,
saver, yeah.
whose debut at Churchill, going 5.5 furlongs back in 2022. She's in the race with Hoosier Philly, and
Who
Hoosier
who was
Philly
who
at that
was
point,
was
the
very
best
good.
2-year-old. She was the
Yeah.
best for early on. She was undefeated when she wins the Goldenrod, and when she starts the Rachel Alexandra, she's like the Kentucky Oaks Philly favorite at that point.
Mhm.
And so that's the debut for two item saver. Following that debut, we see this horse go to Colonial, win at Colonial, going 6, then goes to Keeneland, wins by 13 lengths. It was a small field that day. It was only a field of 4. They stretched the horse out, doesn't want to go long, has a little bit of trouble, just doesn't get the greatest trip in that November 24th race. But then they cut back to a sprint on the synthetic at Turfway, and the horse comes from off the pace pretty impressively. And there's definitely ability here with this filly.
Well, yeah, I mean, that Churchill race, the one going long, there was some good horses in there. Punch
Yep.
Bowl's very good. Corningstone was very good. The alleys look. I mean, she wasn't running against slouches
These were
there.
all like
Chop
Oaks
Chop was in
horses.
that race.
These are literally
Uh,
all Oaks horses.
yeah, and you can definitely forgive that. And if you put your line through that race, this horse rates a good shot here. And I like this horse, and probably will get uh, a decent price considering who the connections are.
And she's a
And
little light on speed figures too,
yes,
you
so
know.
that one will fly under the radar. I'm
sh-
definitely using that one.
she's really interesting, really intriguing. Two item saver in a fun edition of the Inside Info. As we've told you, each one of these races, big field after big field after big field. Up next, it's the Pegasus World Cup Filly and Mare Turf. Okay, let me, Barry, get us started with this one, a mile and a 16th. I think I can pull up the morning line on this one for that, so that way we can see, we can get a look at what the odds are. Okay, talk to us about how you see this race playing up, shaping up a little bit. Who are some of the horses on your radar? And I'll pull up the odds so that way everyone can get an idea what the morning line looks like.
Sure, sure. I mean, this race is another one. Um, that has some really good horses in it. It's not the biggest field that we'll see on Saturday, but it's very high in quality. I tend to think that this one might be a little bit more straightforward. I think the race kind of goes through Mission of Joy. I think that horse was really good. Got good last year, sort of around this time of year,
Yep.
and kind of starting up again. And I think this is a good spot for her. It's not too difficult of a spot, but it's not easy either. I mean, you have these horses coming from the West Coast like Didia, who's been doing some damage out there. And those horses are hard to evaluate when they get out of California because there's such a vacuum out there. Those horses are kind of isolated and they usually don't get out much.
Yeah, it's
So,
nice, a complete, and because the depth, especially in the turf divisions, the depth isn't quite there in Southern California. Horses on the dirt can always compete really well all over because they have the speed that'll sort of be the equalizer. But a lot of the turf horses with the depth, completely agree with you. The thing about Didia, what's nice is that we've seen her all over and she's been pretty competitive in different circuits. I think she fits well in here. I don't know, as we take a look at the morning line here, Star Fortress, who's 5-2. This is just the type of favorite who I don't really know what to do with, and I'll probably not play as much in my exotics because she's really getting bet big off, or she's going to be bet big off that one race.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
it was a
But it,
great,
it was a perfect trip, though.
perfect trip and an awesome effort. I mean, she got
Yeah.
monster by her speed figure. She was good that day. The problem I have is, one, over the last couple years, that Churchill turf course has just been weird. It's
Mm.
been bad. They've had issues with it. It's been open. It's been closed. They've been off the turf for tons of time. And so we've seen horses have huge performances on that turf or either not like that grass. It's sort of like an outlier a lot of the time. And then two, it was also a good turf course that day. And she comes into the race off a couple months. She races. And because it was such a monster effort, you have to give her a little time off after that race. So she comes back in off of a few months. It's not like it's a layoff after another layoff, but I maybe not quite as sharp because you want to make sure you give the horse a little bit of time. I think there are a few reasons to take a swing against this horse in a race where I like the next tier of horses, some that you were starting to mention.
Yeah, I mean, I think Star Fortress probably get bet down. I mean,
Yeah.
she looks very tough on paper, but again, there's some things that can make you think that
I mean, that was her
that
first turf victory.
right, and that it's just a weird race from that perspective,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you think it goes through Star Fortress, which I don't.
No, me
I
neither.
think there's a really good horse, but
Me too.
I think
From a
there's
gambling standpoint in this race, I don't have enough sample size on her for her to be this overwhelming of a favorite. I think if you can hear throughout the card so far, the races where Barry and I feel like we like these favorites, it's when you have a body of work where you really know you've seen these horses a bunch, you've tried to beat them a few times in different ways, and you know, hey, you know what? This is a nice one, win or lose. I'd rather line up against a different horse. This is one that if she comes back and beats me by 10 again, I'm still fine lining up against her because I'm really trying to play against her off that one race. That was a good race to have bet her if you did. She was 6-1 that day when she jogged, right? She wasn't the heavy favorite that day.
yeah.
And now you're going to be betting her off of that. So no, thank you. You mentioned Didia. Who are some of the others we want?
uh, I mean, what do you do with Cairo Consort? Getting
Yeah,
Ryan Moore, the horse came off the layoff, ran a figure or a buyer number that was equal to her best on the page.
that's a Barry angle right there.
Yes, and the second time out, you step up and you win. It happens a lot, a
She
lot,
missed
a lot.
the second half of her 3-year-old season. So think about some of the maturity and development she might have in her. She was wide last time. Her trip, she ends up being way wide out in the middle of the track. And she is so honest. Last year, she was one of those horses that was not over bet, but she was always going to be favored in a lot of races because she fit really well in those races and she was in a nice, in nice form. You're going to be able to bet her in this race where you've never really been able to before. You
Yeah.
know, she's going to save ground. She's more of a deeper closer now, but I don't think she has to be that far back as she's been in the last couple races you've seen on paper. She no knocks with her. Other horse I want to mention,
It's fluffy
she
socks.
yeah, that's exactly where I was going. That
Yeah,
was a
because
wicked beat last time. That was a
terrible.
wicked
Yeah.
beat. It's like she didn't see surge capacity up the rail because she's a length and a half clear of the rest of the field. She's a really strong closer, and it doesn't surprise me to see horses with her running style have a record similar to hers where they have more seconds than they do wins because that just happens with deeper closers like this. They
Yeah.
don't get their own race as much. They have traffic, they have to weave in and out. They don't get the type of pace shape they need. I don't think it's she's not a winner or she hangs. It's more of, oh, she didn't really get the pace that day she needed.
Right. And honestly, with Irad landing here, I would think that this horse is probably going to be a little bit closer than normal. Um, just because I think Ruby Nell and probably Accomplished Girl are probably going to hook up early. Not that they're going to be blazing fast, but they're going to keep each other occupied, which will allow other horses to kind of close into that. And Irad doesn't make too many mistakes in this regard on the turf with a horse like Fluffy Socks. You can almost guarantee that this horse is going to be somewhere around the photo finish when it's all
Absolutely.
said and done. So
Yeah.
you can't count that one out. And Ruby Nell is a horse I like a lot, but just not in this spot.
She's super talented. I'm just concerned because the if Ruby Nell or Accomplished Girl weren't in here, I would give the other one a big look.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just think they're going to be quite a nuisance to one another. I know Accomplished Girl sat a little bit last time, and I know Ruby Nell has before, but for both of them in a race like this, a strong competitive race, their best trip is being loose on the front end.
Yeah, and Queen Goddess will have some speed too to
Yep.
kind of make sure that they don't get any breathers.
She could,
Um,
she might be the trip she sat last year. If she sat something exactly like that, where she sits fourth, 2 lengths off the pace or so, that was what won it for her. Remember
mhm.
she was kind of just wide and kept out, just sitting not too far off of it. She hasn't won since that race, but she could fall into a nice spot if she's able to stay out of that. But with being out wide, she could get caught up a little bit too much early.
Yeah, this is a different, a totally different race. I think we even had less entries last year in this
Oh yeah.
race, and
Yeah.
it allowed her to kind of settle. I don't
Yep.
think she's going to have that sort of luxury, especially where she drew,
Mm-hmm.
and then all the other speed. Like even Sister Luann is going to,
Sure.
with Paco is probably going to go.
Because why is she in here otherwise?
Right, and that's why I think Irad is going to end up getting in a good spot. It's just a matter of what the price is going to be on that horse, and then Mission of Joy, who I do like quite a bit, will probably get sort of the same trip that Fluffy Socks wants.
The one that we did not mention that will make her
Chili
way.
Flag is going to take action.
Chili Flag is on paper one that I think a lot of people will look to, especially with Pratt jumping aboard for Brown for these connections. This horse got good towards the end of last year. We just talked about Tass a little while ago, so I could see this one taking some money. And Felicia, she's honest, man. She really ran well last time. She got a great trip up the rail, but she's actually got a lot of versatility to her. I don't want her close to the lead here, but she can finish if that's if that's the trip they decide on. Not quite as good as some of the top tier in here, but a horse who might be able to just fall into a nice spot if she gets the trip. She might be one of the horses in here that gets a little forgotten about if some of the others get bet. She got bet last time, but I got a feeling in this race she could sort of kind of fall through the cracks a little bit here because she's a fair price on the morning line. I think 10-1 is
Hmm.
what she is. Yeah, the number 5. So here's a look one more time
There we
at the
go.
morning line for
So
the
I mean,
Philly.
with Cairo Concert being 15-1, that seems like a stretch. But if you get that price, I
Yeah,
think I might bet that horse.
Cairo Concert at that price, Chili Flag at a big price, Felicia at a big price. You've got Fluffy Socks. That makes sense to me as being one of the top tier horses. I think she'll probably be around 7-2. Didia is a very playable price in around 5-1. Barry mentioned Mission of Joy. So if this is a race where Star Fortress can win, but I have way too many other fun possibilities at big prices in here.
Yeah, it would be to our benefit the way we talked about the race if Star Fortress gets bet down.
Yeah.
Um, because there's a lot of options here. I
Yep.
mean, I think the morning line, at least looking at it, I think they kind of overvalued the California horses a little bit. So you'll see, that fluctuation. And
Even
I
out a
think
little.
Fluffy Socks will probably be second choice
Me
based
too.
on the
I could be
connections.
seeing her like 7-2.
Right. And I and
Yeah,
I also think Cairo Concert would probably take some action
eight
more
to
than
one.
than what they're kind of predicting here.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a great betting race, man.
Race number 10 on Saturday at Gulfstream Park. It's the Pegasus Filly and Mare Turf. Let's keep moving along. Where do we head next? We're going to the grade 3 Fred Hooper. So for this race, it's a mile on the main track. What you have here are the horses who maybe didn't want to go in the Pegasus. Maybe they're a cut below. Maybe they can't quite go that far. They will show up in here. And from a pace standpoint, I think a lot of it's going to run through Hijazi from the rail because you have Pratt. This horse doesn't really want to come off the pace all that much. I
No.
don't think he really even wants to go more than a sprint distance, but he might be able to get a trip like this on the lead if he's just handled aggressively. It, his last race in the Malibu, he actually got the lead, but Speedboat Beach was another Baffert and was the inside of him. So he didn't cross over on the other Baffert. So it was a little tougher for him. The horse up the rail ends up beating him that day. I don't think they're going to have any sort of issue like that. He's here and he's going to be sending hard from the rail, right?
He should be. Yeah. I mean, what else is he gonna do? He's not
Yeah.
gonna sit and there, I just the way Baffert trains his horses and runs the horses, he's going to the front.
Yep.
And it's just a matter of how long he wants to be out there. Uh, but there's other speeds here, and I
Especially
don't
right
know
next
if
door to him, even.
right, Expressman has some zip. Uh, Somebody's got to take a crack at this horse so he doesn't get that breather. Not to mention the fact that he's stretching out a little further than he
Yep.
probably wants to. This is the time to beat him. And
Accreditive doesn't have to be too far. He's shown some speed in spots. Giant Game's
Giant
been
Game,
ridden, and because that's where he's been good on the lead. I don't think he is as fast as a Jazzy, but they
I
have
have
to
a
ride
theory
him
on
that
that
way.
one. I have a
Yeah.
theory on Giant Game in this race, and it seems like that this horse might be in there for a rabbit,
Mm-hmm.
for Cyclone Mischief, who I do like. Um, Cyclone Mischief kind of came into his own going this trip last year, um, in that optional claimer 75,000
Yep.
on January 8th. He kind of came into his own, and people were like, "Ooh, this horse is pretty decent." And then he kind of tailed off, kind of got back into it, and didn't really develop a style. But I think the one turn mile suits this horse perfectly. And this one
I
can
like the
sit a
Tory.
little bit.
I like the Tory on him too.
Right, exactly. You get a nice patient rider in Frankie who's gonna be very, very versatile with what he's gonna do and gives himself outs. as far as what he can do with this horse, and I think that's a good thing. You know, even a horse like Gilmore um, has some races back last year that can easily win this race.
Mhm.
Comes off the bench, runs a decent race against Sibelius, who you know is a really, really good horse. Came flying late, probably needed. I think that one will step up a little bit.
Look at some of his losses. Sibelius, Saudi Crown, New York Thunder, rest in peace, Arabian Lion. You know, those
I mean,
are
General Jim,
yeah,
who at
nice
that time was
horses at
razor
nice
sharp.
times. And Fort Bragg, who he's behind, Drew's Gold was another really sharp horse
Oh
when
yeah,
he's
Drew's
third
gold.
in the Woody Stevens there. Um, so he's been in strong races. Last year he was facing some of the better 3-year-olds. I never thought he was quite at the top. This is a good level for him
Yeah,
right here.
this is perfect.
The
And
good
then
spot class wise.
the other horse, like if you told me I had to bet this race today, I'm taking Tumbarumba.
That's my top pick. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
He should get a nice trip. The Louis size ride is what I call it, where he's, flanking the speeds and then taking over in the stretch and just finishing it off. I
Yep.
can see that trip happening with this horse. And
Exactly.
and I want to be there if the price is right.
Go through his form recently. Go through his entire body of work. He can eliminate the max field on a sloppy racetrack. Just put a line right through it. Eliminate the 2 turf races. You're left with 8 in the money finishes in 8 dirt starts. Horse always shows up. He has a nice tactical style. He can pass horses. His last race was a perfect tightener for this because he was in a small field. He chased a lone speed winner that day, and he got to go a little bit farther.
Hmm.
Now he gets to turn back, so he'll be a little sharper. He'll have a little more late oomph, and he doesn't have to be that far out of it. But you and I are pointing out, I think there's a couple horses that can soften up Hijazi a little bit. And I like Tumbarumba sitting a really nice trip in here for a barn who's been flying throughout the meet so far.
Yeah, I mean, you almost can't beat him.
Yeah.
But yeah, that horse is definitely one I'm using. I mean,
Yep.
if not just solely using that one. Cyclone Mischief definitely is going to get a second look from me.
I
Um,
like what you talked about with this one too, because he was he was good last year, even in the Florida Derby in the Fountain of Youth. He was not bad, and that Florida Derby race came back a really, really strong race with a bunch of next out winners. Remember, Forte, when we next saw him after the Florida Derby, he came back and was second in the Belmont. And Mage won the Derby out of here. Il
mhm.
Miracolo won a graded stakes race, or he won an optional claimer the next
Optional,
we saw him, and he won
but
a
been
graded stakes
real
race later in the
competitive.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, he won the Smarty Jones later in the year. West Coast Derby came back to win an optional first level allowance coming out of that race. The next we saw him. We saw Nautical Star come back out of the Florida Derby a few months later in August. He won a first level allowance race. Mr. Peaks and WNL all did. Very strong race that Cyclone Mischief was third in last year. And you're right. I think he had ability, but I remember in those races wondering, what's his running style going to be? Because he didn't seem quite as fast as maybe some of the other horses in there, but he wasn't really a closer. I think he's just grown up now and he'll be able to
Yeah.
sit a better trip in here. He can be forwardly placed, but he can sit off the pace a little bit. I would love to see him sitting like fourth in this
Yeah,
race,
that would be perfect. And
somewhere like that.
he's a big horse anyway, so kind of getting him out and having him kind of run down horses is probably what he's going to be best at. And another horse that probably won't catch too much action, who I think has a really good shot, is Steel Sunshine. Um, if things really kind of melt down, I think Steel Sunshine is going to be there to pick up all the pieces.
You and I, here's Steel Sunshine, who comes out of the Harlan Holiday last stout. We're going to see O'Connor in the big one in the Pegasus World
Mhm.
Cup in just a few races. The horse to the outside, I just don't know with his running style if Gulfstream is going to be the best for him. We were going to talk about him in one of the races a few weeks ago, and he ended up
Mhm.
going to the race at Aqueduct instead. He was favored in that race, and he did have to move really wide. And if you watch that race, he looked like he was going to win. He loomed up. He just had to go 5-6 wide, and he got to just out finish late. That was going a mile. I like him as a horse. I just don't know if this is the spot right now, but I've kept my eye on him because last year, after he broke his maiden at Belmont, I thought he was an intriguing horse, and then he just missed almost his whole 3-year-old season. When he came back in August, he needed a few races to get back into form. He strung together a couple nice ones at Aqueduct, but not sure if this is the spot for him. He's just one I keep an eye on. I kept coming back to Tumbarumba here.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Tumbarumba is quick and should be able to get position. Um, Signator, it's hard to envision this horse getting a winning trip in this race. Where's he going to be? I mean, you would think that the speed horses are just too fast,
Yep.
and the closers close better than him. So he's kind of in a tough spot. I think if this field was smaller, he'd probably have a better shot. But
every time I see our horse in this race, I want to start singing. I get knocked down, but I get up again. Ain't ever going. Oh no, that's Chumbawamba, not Tumbarumba. Okay. Oh, Donny boy. As we move along to the final 2 races on the Saturday card, Barry Spears joining me here. Thanks so much, all of you, for hanging out with us as we've navigated our way through the daily racing form past performances. Races 6 through 13 were the focus of our conversation here, and we're now up to race number 12. This one is the Pegasus World Cup Turf, and here's a look at the field in here. The morning line favorite is actually a filly, Warm Heart, who finished second, beaten just a neck in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. Following that, she went over and finished third in the Hong Kong Vase, which is a Group 1. And she's a legitimate horse. She came into the Breeders' Cup off of back-to-back Group 1 victories going 1.5 miles. Now, I continue to say she, because she is a filly facing the boys. And she's a newly turned 4-year-old filly facing older boys. She's also going to be at a distance that she's certainly capable, but her best races have been going longer as of late. So I do think, you can at least take a few knocks and, question a few things about her being a heavy favorite, as she likely will be. She's, I think 9 to 5 on the morning line is what they have her installed here. So from the conversation starting point, what do you think about Warm Heart? Warm Heart, I mean, classy, Barry, super classy, but not unbeatable in a spot like this.
definitely not unbeatable. I mean, you see my horse in there, King Max.
Yeah, he ran well last time. Let's get to the
Yeah,
PTs here.
yeah. I mean, this is a tough race. I mean, a horse like Integration could be any kind. This horse could blow this field away and look like the next coming of Bricks and Mortar.
And they're getting some bad vibes too on social media for taking Carmouche off. There was an
Yeah,
article that came out too.
you have to wonder what the decision making process was there, because
And I feel, and because you don't always know, because it may have been a thing like, well, Gaffleone rode this horse first time out. I think they said he was going to go in a different
he was
spot,
hurt or
but they
something.
rode him on. They weren't sure they were going to run on September the 9th at Colonial, because Gaffleone, I don't think, was there that day.
I
But
think he
they
was
ended
hurt.
Yeah, so they ended up riding in the Virginia Derby, and Carmouche is aboard for the next few. So it's a bummer, because I would never want to take someone off who's won on a horse more recently, but you also feel if it was supposed to be Gaffleone's horse all along, right? You just never know what the full story was or what
Yeah,
everything
and we'll
behind
never
closed
get
doors.
it.
No, it's just a bummer when you see that, especially for someone like Carmouche, who doesn't get, that was his gripe. He said, I ride really well for people, but then I don't get to ride
The
a
big
lot of
race.
the grade
Yeah.
1 horses. Why? What, he's a good speed rider too. He does a really good job. He's very aggressive. So just at least worth mentioning, because that was a little bit of a bummer. And I think Dave Grenning had an article on drf.com about the decision, and just how it's one thing as a jock, you forget we're all human. You're going to feel bummed out when that happens. They're not
Yeah,
machines. They're not just statistics on the paper. These are real people with real feelings.
absolutely. And it's funny because there's like no speed in this race at all.
No. You got main
And
event,
yeah, and Jerry the Nipper, and
and
that one really doesn't want to go to the lead either.
no, but he by
Uh,
default just could be sitting pretty
right,
close.
because he's closest to the rail, and will get out ahead of everybody else. And honestly, I'm against Warm Heart.
I
You
don't think
know,
she needs to win this race.
well, I mean, just look at the last 4 or 5 races, right? It was in Ireland at the Curragh, went to the UK, went to Longchamp, Santa Anita, and then to Hong Kong.
That's
Now
a
down to
lot of
Florida.
traveling.
That's a lot. That's a lot, and could take a toll on a horse, especially kind of at the at this point in the season, which is really the beginning, I guess.
But she hasn't had a gap.
No,
Look, from
she hasn't had a
April
breather. No
To May
breather.
to June to July to August to September, November. So she had a slight, not really a gap because you're traveling to come to the Breeders' Cup, and then shot 6 weeks ago and back here. So this is a lot to ask of a filly that just turned 4, facing older boys, maybe at a distance that's not exactly her best. So at a very short price too.
Yeah, and these are kind of favorites you want to beat in on days like this because there's a lot of money being thrown around. That horse is going to take a lot of action, and then it's like one of those things you see the results and you're like, man, that horse got beat. How? But it happens all the time, especially in a situation like the Breeders' Cup, for example, where you get these horses that come from overseas that look like world beaters on paper, and then they finish second or third, and you're like, how did this horse get beat? And usually it's things like this where the horse has been traveling a lot and so on and so forth. Um, King Max is definitely on my radar. I'm still stung by that loss on on December 30th by a
He
head
ran
to main
really well.
event,
Yeah.
who will probably have the run of the race again, main event.
You know,
Um, but Cheryl Spite is another one that runs hard every time. I mean, even in that race where he was kind of overmatched in the Breeders' Cup Mile, but still ran well
he
and
didn't run
ran
that bad.
hard.
Yeah.
From the rail, wasn't an ideal spot, ideal draw. You get beat by Master of the Seas, Modge, Casa Creed, only by 2 lengths. Um, I wouldn't
If
count
I
that
were
one
him
out.
in this race, I would try to get a little aggressive.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
not on the lead, but sit a little closer than normal because we don't know how far he wants to go. This might be pushing the boundaries of him wanting to get more than a trip. Anyone can get it with a good journey. If you sit and you get the jump, that's the type of trip I'd love to see for him if I was someone who backed him in this race.
yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of tricky because if they don't get aggressive, they're going to be, kind of against it.
Yeah.
And there's a possibility where they won't be aggressive. So, you got to tread carefully. Even a horse like Catnip can get position early, and Dettori,
He got
for
really good.
whatever reason, he comes here and he's super aggressive,
Mhm.
and I like that.
Me
I
too.
think he understands pace of the U.S. game,
He
basically.
does. He's smart. He just gets it. He's, hey, you know what?
Yeah,
I can be a speed
he's
rider, and if they're not going
outstanding.
to go, I'm going to go. Sure.
Right. And he does it a lot out in California. You watch him ride day in and day out, and the
Stevens was
guy
doing
just
this at the end of his career too when he came back,
he
and there
was
was that's how he was winning a lot of races. Just no one's going
just
to go.
reading the
Sure.
form basically,
Cool.
and being
I'll
like, all
go.
right, right. He knows this race top to bottom, front to back, you know, up and down. And it wouldn't surprise me if he kind of gets aggressive.
Yep.
But that also leads me to the idea that this pace might heat up.
With a couple of
Um,
these looking at it saying, we don't really have much of a chance unless we're really close.
right.
The,
And that'll benefit a horse like Integration and Web Slinger,
that's
who are
there we go. Web slinger.
who
Yeah.
are like the younger horses in this group, but they have a distinct style.
Hmm.
And I think Web Slinger will really be the beneficiary. I think they have him at like 15 to 1 on the morning line. If you get
Yeah.
that price on Web Slinger in this race, I'd take it.
Me too. I have to use him in all exotics. He's now going to go third start off the bench. It looks like he's primed and ready for this race. You know what you're going to get from him. He's always going to show up with a late run. He just needs a little bit of a trip in here. And I think he can get it from this post in this race with a couple possible speeds. Uh, Web Slinger is definitely in the mix for me. No idea what we're going to do with Integration. I don't think he can win, but man, I keep watching those races for Jerry, and you keep talking about the trip too. I would not be shocked to see him hit the board again in here with
Yeah.
just trying hard, but somebody's a little bit better than him. It it's not. It's weird because it's a competitive race, but there's not a bunch of overwhelming monsters that scare you. The difference between this guy and his best races and some of the others in here and their best races, it's not that far. And he might be able to take advantage of a trip in here. I'm going to throw him in at least in some unders because he's honest. Him and King Max ran really well last time. They
Oh
both
yeah.
did. They both did.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you could say, I guess, Warm Heart would be that monster, but given some of the context of how this horse is coming into this race,
Absolutely.
there's some questions there.
And
And
she might
and
be, but we've picked some, I think, very valid holes in
mhm.
her form. And just, okay, if she shows up with her best race, is her best race probably better than everybody else's best race? Yep. But we have reasons to think she may not run her best race on Saturday at a short price.
Yeah, she's gonna get bet down probably about 3 to 5 also. And
Mm-hmm.
these are the ones, like I said, you got to play hero ball. That's what I call it. You play
Yep.
hero ball in it on days like the Pegasus, on days like uh, you know, the Derby or the Preakness or
You
any
find 5
big
to 2
race
and
day.
3 to 1 any day of the week.
Right. And
Any day.
right, this is your chance to get a good horse at a good price. Why not take a shot? That's how, big tickets kind of come together, is when you use these horses that, people are kind of shying away from because they think somebody else is a cinch. And you might have that situation here on Saturday with Warm Heart where even a Tone who's probably going to get overlooked.
Last year's winner.
Right. Has a good chance. Likes the turf there at Gulfstream. His comeback race wasn't anything to write home about in the last on December 2nd. But man, this horse could fall into a great trip here.
Mm-hmm.
Gets O'Sheen Murphy, um, and probably will be a decent price. You get,
Remember last year he was 12 to 1 on the morning line and we
ended up
we
three to
played him.
one, right?
Yeah, we played him that day. We liked him and I remember
Yeah,
we gave him out for the stable dual horses that we liked and he ended up going off. I think he
3
wasn't
or 4 to
favored.
1.
Yeah, he was 3 just like not even 4 to 1, 380, but he wasn't favored but he was almost because City Man was
Hmm.
favored and Ivar
Yes,
were just
City Man on the way outside was in the
yeah.
12th spot.
Yep.
And I was like, why are they making this horse the favorite? But, you know,
That was
that's bettors
last
for you.
year's Pegasus World Cup turf. We both feel like a fun horse to throw into some of your late exotics in here is Webslinger for sure. That's one that we both seem to
Hmm.
land on that we think will get a nice trip and that fits well and should be a nice price. So if you're looking for a fun horse to include in a pick 4 or 5 here, we both think this one will run well. Webslinger to look at the Pegasus World Cup turf. Let's go to the main event, not the horse we were just talking about in race 12, the Pegasus World Cup. And we'll take a quick look at the morning line for this one. 9 to 5 on National Treasure, the Preakness winner. National Treasure was the runner up in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. He finished behind Cody's Wish that day. Really good effort. He finished second. He was only beaten a nose. That was by far the best race of his career based on speed figures. And the one thing with National Treasure, he's pretty one-dimensional. He's not really one that wants to sit off the pace and close and pass horses. He really does just want to go to the front end.
Oh yeah, he wants to go to the lead, and speed is the weapon.
Yep.
Um, yeah, this is a tough race. I mean, again, it's not overwhelming with star power. I mean, a lot of these horses, a lot of people won't recognize. Um, but man, they're all evenly matched.
Yep.
They all have their flaws. That it's kind of like the B team, but they're all on the same plane, which makes this a
That's
great.
yes.
It makes this a great event to
You
bet.
can see a lot of these horses just winning the race if it shapes up in different ways.
Sure, absolutely. And I want to start with a horse that um, doesn't really fit the profile for a Gulfstream Park winner, and that's
Oh,
Senor Buscador.
I knew you were going there. Yes,
Well,
I agree.
I mean, that Cigar Mile, if you watched all the races that day at Aqueduct, there was distinct speed bias that day, and nobody was closing. This was the only horse really all day long that closed with any kind of kick. And I think that's going to do this horse a lot of good. Now, where he's going to sit, he's probably going to be far back. And that's why I kind of have a little pause for cause
That's the
here.
concern, right? Is the
Right.
trip
He's going to
from
get
a
too far back and then not be able to make up that ground and do another second or third place finish.
his level though, the class level, it fits beautifully with this group.
Oh,
If you
yeah.
look at the horses who he's been facing lately, you just pointed out Hoist the Gold. Okay, he was chasing a lone speed winner that day on a muddy track. So very good effort to finish second. Right before that, he's in the Breeders' Cup Classic against White Abario in a race where
Nobody was beating them that day.
no,
So,
and there was
yeah.
just no like look at the chart for the race too. There was no passing. White Barrio sat third. Derma
Hmm.
Sotogake sat a couple lengths off, and Arabian Night set the pace, and they finished first, third, and fourth. They were in the top three early. The only horse that showed speed and backed up was Saudi Crown, and the other horses that were forwardly placed all stayed.
Yep.
So no passing in that race for Senor Buscador in the Breeders' Cup Classic against the best horses there were. In the Awesome again, he beats National Treasure. He finishes in front of National Treasure. He's third. National Treasure's fourth that day in the Awesome again. Look, if you were to put White Abario, Slow Down Andy, Defunded, Arabian Night, any of those horses in this race, they're favored.
Yeah.
Any of them.
Easily.
And those are the horses who he's getting beat by. He's actually beating National Treasure. You see Cody's Wish there, Proxy, Defunded. All of those horses would be favored in this race.
Yeah.
They're all stronger than who he's going to be facing in this race. The biggest question is just, does he get the trip?
I think he will.
I do
Because
too.
I think there's going to be a lot of cat and mouse games going on up front, and these horses are going to kind of hook up. I think First Mission, if they were smart, if their connections were, I shouldn't say if they were smart. I should say if they think about the race and how it's shaping up, I think they're faster than National Treasure. They could jump the gate and get in front of that horse and then kind of take National Treasure out of kind of the scene,
That was supposed to be
snatch his heart early
the
and
Preakness matchup, remember?
yes,
And
yes.
before he scratched and he was
I
drawn to the on the outside. I liked
yeah,
him that day. We thought he was going to run really well in that race.
yes, and he ended up scratching, but every time this horse gets on the track, he's going to put forth a great effort. I
Yep,
don't see that changing.
me
I
neither.
think he's better. He's a
I think
better
he's the horse to
horse.
beat personally.
He is better. He's better than National Treasure. He's going to be forwardly placed, and there's not much speed here. Um, and then beyond that, if you don't think that First Mission can really get this trip, which there is a question mark there.
Yep.
Um, who's the most likely closer at a decent price? You could go trademark with that.
That's
You
the
could
other one that I
go,
think is worth mentioning. He's super honest, and he can get more of a trip than Senor Buscador, maybe.
yep. And
Right?
then you got O'Connor and Skippy Longstocking, who are the home team that do run well at this track. And I don't see anything of that, changing.
No,
I know. You look at O'Connor; he threw in a couple of clunkers, like that one last year in this race. He didn't run well. It's kind of unexplained because you see before and after that he was running
he's
excellent.
been solid. Almost all of the other races make sense. He snuck up the rail last time, which was nice for him to see that he could move
Hmm.
through a tight spot. He got there late. That was probably not the race that he was even all out and
Right.
ready for, right? It was this one for the big effort.
And
I've
it,
yeah.
and it may have been just one of those fluky things, but I do think that race on October 28th, the Keeneland race, the Fayette, I think that race as a whole is very similar to this one. So, I expect a really good effort out of O'Connor. If Skippy Longstocking, I just don't like the post very
That's the,
much,
that's the problem. He's so cool though. He
but
ran
he's
well
a
in the
good
Breeders' Cup.
horse. Right. He definitely ran very, very well. um, in that Cody's Wish National Treasure beating him, but he was right there. I
Yep.
mean, I don't see that horse throwing in a bad race, although the trip might get him. What do you do with Croupi? I really don't know what to do with that horse.
It
He
was
looks okay.
He was super
Um,
impressive. Kind of, he seems to me like like watching him visually. He has no problem with distances. He's kind of a little quirky himself. He's gotten himself into a little trouble here, but certainly ability. We had mentioned Signator. He was fourth in that race that Croupi won, who has some quality also. The the real key to the race, which I'm expecting to happen, is you just have to assume that National Treasure and Hoist the Gold are going to be hooking up early because
yeah,
Hoist the Gold was so impressive stretching out. He's been more of a sprinter throughout his career, and going long, he just doesn't seem like he's going to want to be passing horses. I think he's got to be there. If I probably even in front of National Treasure
yeah, and I there's a chance that Nimitz Class will
from the
kind of put
rail.
that pressure
Yep.
on those front runners, if not trying to vie for the lead. I mean, what do you do from that spot? You gotta
Yeah.
go, right?
Absolutely. Same sort of thing. You don't want to be in a race like this with a horse like this and have to come from 5 lengths out of it when you've never really done that.
Right. Why
You don't want
change
to do that.
tactics? Yeah.
No, you want to see, hey, these are better horses, but we're in this race. Let's, even if we have to ride ourselves aggressively early to stay in it, let's be in the race. Um, yeah, it's just not to me really any of the three Pegasus races, we could see the favorites win for sure. I think of all, like this one in particular, with just National Treasure being the one that was such a heavy favorite over the rest of the field. I just I actually like you said, I thought First Mission was more of the horse to beat because I do think he has a little more versatility. I think there's a little more upside with him too. He's
Hmm.
only made a few starts
Yeah,
back
he's not.
after
He's
missing all that time.
right,
You
and
know,
he
he
hasn't. He doesn't have that many. He's not that weather beaten. Basically,
no,
he doesn't have that many miles on him. He
nope.
hasn't run that many times. So you got to think that he's got those fresh legs
Hmm.
and will be right into the bit early. A horse that probably might get overlooked that I would give a second look to is Grand Aspen.
He ran well last time,
He's kind
and
of coming into his own, and Pletcher does really well with horses like this.
he wouldn't be
Um,
in here if he couldn't be competitive with this group. Pletcher's not going to throw this horse in with a tougher group because there's so many other places he could have put this horse in the race, in the 11th race,
Earlier, yeah.
right in the Hooper there, and he would have been probably one of the top betting
Second
choices in that
choice,
race.
probably
You know,
first or third, second or third choice in that.
absolutely. And if O'Connor doesn't sneak through the rail, he wins that race. He holds off NY Traffic to the outside. I don't really knock him at all or anyone who wants to use him.
No,
It's
I mean, there's not many horses in this race that if they were to win, I'd be shocked.
no, and you were pointing it out. They're not the grade ones, but they all are pretty. They seem within reach of one another. They
Yes.
really do. It's a well matched group with a couple horses who probably give their best. Okay, maybe that is National Treasure and First Mission, but neither one of them is like towers over this field compared to the price. So we give Senor Buscador a big look coming out of those strong races. And there are versions of this race where he gets the trip, he comes rolling, and he has multiple races that are good enough to win this thing.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm really excited for Saturday.
Me
Like this
too,
pick
man. Woo!
5, pick 6, everything is going to be really, really healthy as far as pools go, and we're just going to be firing away, and it's going to be like a little throwback. I think everybody needed it with the thaw out. Everybody's trying to get warmer weather going, and
Yep. This is going
this
to
is
be
this is going to be nice on
because
Saturday.
we're going to get some favorites in some races anywhere, it's inevitable. But with the size of these fields, there are going to be some races where favorites aren't even short prices because the money will be so spread out. And you have tons of betting opportunities throughout the day. One more look at the Philly and Mare Turf. Here's the field for that one with Star Fortress, the morning line favorite in there. Then you've got to look at the turf with Warm Heart as the morning line favorite in that one. And the World Cup, you'll have National Treasure and First Mission take a lot of money in this one. Pegasus World Cup PPs, they are up and available. Don't forget that big contest, the World Cup Betting Championship, 6,000 entry. But if you're listening to this on Tuesday or Wednesday, don't worry, you can actually try to qualify this for a lot less. Wednesday and Thursday at Gulfstream, they have feeders. And on Friday, there's $1,000 contest. You can enter that one for $1,000 and try to win your $6,000 seat out of that, or qualify for 80. Barry, what's going on in the world of going in circles and Big Mondays?
Oh, we're doing our thing. We just had a show yesterday. It's out now. Um, it's one of our longer ones, but we talk a little hoops at the end, and we talk a little bit of Pegasus. Not too much. We kind of just outline the fields a little bit. Uh, but yeah, every Monday or slash Tuesday, because we tape it on Monday, but it comes out Tuesday, but it's called Big Monday. So I guess it's confusing, but people end up gravitating to it, so that's good. The site is up, racinghub.com. Chuck posted an article the other day, so we're getting that going. You'll see some more stuff from that, but you'll see me here and there. I'll be on different podcasts and things like that, but life is good, man.
Man of the people. And wasn't that what a line, because wasn't that a Pegasus winner a few years ago?
Yes,
Life is
sir.
good. There we go.
Yes,
So
sir.
bigger fields this time than when it was the Life is Good Knicks Go field. Fun day of racing. Good luck, everyone, on Saturday. Remember, DRF has you covered with those past performances. Everything you need to get all ready for that big day, go to drf.com. If you need any other help throughout the week, shoot me a message. Barry always loves talking to folks out there on social media. He's a man of the people. We wish you the best of luck on Saturday, folks. Well, let's crush it at Gulfstream Park.